Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever in the world you might be. I am Nicole BC, and you know everything. Okay, party people. So as some of you are aware, I've just been to hell and back, quite literally. Everything was destroyed in a hurricane. I died a death, and now I'm back alive. Things have been weird. And so this is, sometimes there's things that I'm workshopping for a really long time before I bring it to an episode. Other times it's very much like my own lived experience as someone who owns a handful of different businesses, as someone who's supporting multiple business owners, as someone who is an artist and a creative who's worked in the arts and creative industries for 20 plus years. There's a lot of things that I think about very compulsively. And I create these episodes so that we can come together in this space-time continuum and meet up to inspire each other. And this is really fresh. So it's going to be a little bit of vulnerability. I'm probably going to get one of the, vulnerability hangover, as they say, after this one. I am recording it in advance. So sometimes when I do that, I'm like, oh, I won't even remember this is happening. And then I see it come out on the day and I'm like, fuck. But I'm going to be talking about what happens when your world falls apart and none of your old tools and resources work. And for those of us who have been very committed to this journey, I called it my self-induced professional development program in my early 20s. I was devastated by a lot of things this year. And then an actual devastation pushed through where I live. And I did my very fucking best to keep my actual head above literal water. And it didn't work. And there was a solid 2 months, 8 weeks of complete numb, disassociative inability to anything. And I spent the first, I would say, 10 days in a state of shock, but also action, because I am a doer. And I thought that by getting my property cleared up or getting people into homes or shoveling mud and volunteering or going for a run or eating as nutritious as I could when you don't have access to electricity or water or any real types of services, like grocery stores. I did my best. And what was the hardest part is that even after sitting in meditation or doing my own yoga flow or going for a run, I felt worse. And I can remember, probably about a month into it, some people were doing some outdoor yoga classes. I went for like an outdoor sauna and cold plunge, and I could not connect with the people, and everybody just wanted to keep talking about the trauma we were all enduring. And someone had asked for heart openers and yoga. If you know, you know. And I was just like, no, I am not available for any of this. And it scared the shit out of me. I've been through a few things. And so I'm very aware of that feeling of I am going to feel like this forever. I know enough to know that's not true. That's some very, very problematic, destructive, painful thought patterns that it's taken me multiple decades to simply recognize. I will never say that I could cure myself of those thought patterns, but I have enough distance now between me and my thoughts and my emotions that I can simply see them. I can be in witness of them without necessarily reacting to them. But that didn't fucking help. So yeah, I want to talk to you or anyone who's ever felt lost or broken or stuck in a place so fucking deep it feels like there's no way out. And maybe life has given you this gift recently. Maybe it's something you can relate to in your past. Maybe it's something you're really scared about happening and it hasn't quite happened yet. And maybe you've got a little bit of survivor's guilt around that. But what do you do when the tools or the practices you've relied on to get you through don't work? And maybe this is something like that feels like a little superficial, or like you don't even deserve to be having these experiences around it. I certainly spend a lot of time going, why am I so fucked up? I see plenty of other people just going on about their lives. And it was really easy for me to now not just tell myself these horrible, awful things about how this was it forever. And I was, I'm just a crazy person now, but also like I'm weak and selfish and self-indulgent because, so-and-so is just getting up and going to work every day. Meanwhile, I can't like get up off the fetal position of my own fucking apartment. And I have an apartment, and there are people who don't have anything. So yeah, it can be, I think in my notes I wrote, it can be devastating on top of devastation when what you would typically do to get yourself out of these ruts, all of these tools, all of us who are doing the work, air quotes, we've come to rely on. Like, I mean, there was a solid 7 weeks where I couldn't even take a hot shower. I couldn't, for 2 weeks, I couldn't make myself a nutritious meal. I couldn't sleep. That's just my own crazy. It's not like someone was, poking me with a knife or something, keeping me from sleeping. But, these things that like we take for granted, like going for a walk, going out into nature, drinking a glass of water, taking a hot shower. I'm privileged enough to just assume those things should be available to me all damn day, every damn day. And they were just not at all. Thankfully, I'm also privileged enough that I have a pretty reliable and thorough both yoga and meditation practice, which have always been my balm and my medicine since I actually got off meds, which I'm exploring again, just for the record, no judgment. But yeah, they've been my mental health practice, right? And so when those tactics abandoned me, it really felt like I had just slipped into the abyss. So whatever the circumstances may be, and hopefully you cannot relate to anything I'm saying, but there's a little bit that can. Or maybe you know somebody who might be able to, or maybe you're just listening for a friend, whichever end of that spectrum you might land on. I want you to know one thing: your friend is not alone. I know I've been talking about this a lot. And, you guys have really been my first responders in the sense that, the last 2 years, when I look back at the art that I have created, it's been really up and down in terms of my own output and energy because it has been rough. And also I'm still going to show up. And I hear a lot of people talk about how just showing up no matter what and being on schedule, and that's inauthentic, or it's like programmed capitalism, or I don't know, whatever the fuck. And it's like, sure. And also, I like having a commitment. Like, I like that expectation. It gives me something to really focus on. So especially when things get hard or dicey or doubtful, for me to know, well, I've got a podcast episode to record and release, that actually gives me this anchor. And it felt like the only thing that I could even qualify as security, because I know this is going to happen. And so thank you, firstly, for humoring me throughout this entire process. But I think I've discovered now, feeling like I'm on the other side of it. And yes, that was really quick. Yeah, I did move through the heaviest, gnarliest grief layered upon multiple grieving processes quickly. And not that that's a goal at all, but I am surprising even myself with how different I feel now than I did even just 2 weeks ago. So I am going to talk a little bit about some of the research out there. As you've noticed, I've been doing, it's kind of my thing now. I'm, working on some other stuff, but let's talk about what's going on when we are depressed and despairing and hopeless. Why is that so overwhelming? Then we are going to talk about some of the smallest, most available things that can be introduced to then be, the droplet that creates the wave of change. And last, I'm going to share my, 3 tactile takeaways that you can play with and see, like, maybe this will work, or at least put this in your back pocket for your friend, wink, wink, who might need a little bit of this energy. So I do just want to say, this isn't about toxic positivity, nor is this about bypassing or quick fixes. This is hopefully creating a space for actual healing. Because when we are able to really sit with that despair, we feel it, we process it, and ultimately we release it. We do transform that energy by being willing to hold on to it in the first place. So with that, let's get into it. I know it's another fun one. Thanks, 2024. Despair feels completely and totally overwhelming, Because when we get thrown a major curveball, like losing a job, losing a relationship, losing a home, losing a sense of purpose, I'm raising my hand, our brains go into survival mode. And Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, who was a trauma research expert and wrote The Body Keeps the Score. See, it's not all Western medicine scientists I'm quoting. Anywho, I mean, he is, whatever, moving on. The Body Keeps the Score revealed that extreme stress can disrupt the connection between the rational prefrontal cortex and the emotional limbic system. This makes it hard to think clearly, regulate emotions, and even imagine a better future. It was very obvious to me after about day 4 that I was in an acute state of trauma. And I noticed it again by being able to kind of just sit with myself and like truly watch myself. I would stare, and because I also have this like very weird sense of time. And then an hour later, I would like look back at whatever it was I was looking at, and that time was lost, but I mean, it had clearly been accounted for, right? And I would be in conversation with people, and this still is happening, where I'd actually forget what I was talking about. And those words are also gone. I would kind of just trail off in the middle of a sentence. And not only was I experiencing that, but I would walk up and down the street, especially those first few days, because that's all we could do. And I witnessed other people in this exact same sort of physical space of just sort of staring off into the distance, not able to, like, even if you made eye contact with them, they couldn't focus. Anywho, the point being, I'd never had so much awareness or such a prolonged experience of a traumatic space. And I could feel it like rewiring my brain. It was really, that's where the meditation was like, I don't know if this is a good thing. Like, I felt like at one point I was looking at like a circuit board and watching like wires just get like ripped out and not even resoldered, just like left hanging and like, you know, sparking. And I was like, look, okay, cool, neat, brain. Thanks for that. How are you able to regulate yourself if your brain isn't even responding to the typical requests from your emotional wiring to like calm down, right? So our old friend oh my goodness, BZ, Dr. Martin Seligman. What is up with my words today? Okay. Like talk about old tricks. I did all the things. I wrote, I did a badass yoga practice. I had my protein shake. I had some conversations with people. These aren't my first words. Sometimes I like just start talking and it's hard for other people to hear, but I did all of the things and I'm still like jumbling all of my words. So yeah, it's fine. It's cool. I'm okay with it. Thank you for your patience with me. But so Dr. Martin Seligman, who I have now spoken about, I think in the last 3 episodes, one of the fathers of positive psychology. It's funny, when I was sort of looking up my other favorite, Csikszentmihalyi, I didn't put the phonetic spelling here, Csikszentmihalyi. I mean, these bros literally are coined the term positive psychology. They wrote the book on it. Doc Martin is also credited with being the living expert because old mate Chick no longer with us. So I think that's why he kind of gets all the credit these days. But anywho, I digress. So he talks about learned helplessness. And when I was researching this, I was like, ding, 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 ding. For any of us raised in a household where feelings weren't exactly encouraged, let alone rewarded, the only way we could get attention is if we were hurt. And I might be talking about myself. I don't know. But this concept of learned helplessness really resonated with me. And it's the idea that when we experience repeated failure or loss, we can start to believe that nothing we do matters. This can then lead to feelings of apathy and hopelessness, which is that level 1 energy, right? Which means there's nothing you can do, so you don't need to do anything. And the advantage of this experience is it's a beautiful place to pause and like I said, just hold that fucking pain and suffering and sit with it. Also, it's not beautiful at all. Well, I don't know. Some of us that are a little more romantic than others do find a certain je ne sais quoi in that pain and suffering. But this is the problem. This is the learned helplessness, right? It's like we actually get a lot of attention. We might even get a lot of support and help. We certainly get permission to just do nothing. And when you might feel like no matter what you do, it is not affecting the change that you desire, it might this might also apply, the brain is responding to this repeated pain, the pain that you continually experience. And typically, the way our brains are wired, we want to find a solution. But if we're still using all of our energy just to simply stay alive and or heal, our brain is going to rewire for that activity, because not only is it more demanding, it truly is more important. Like staying alive is forever and always going to be your brain's number one priority. So you're not ready for the problem solving yet. And your brain is capable of creating new patterns and pathways, but that can go both ways. And that's why small, consistent action is helpful. And also, if you're not able to do that, there's a reason for that. And the sooner you recognize that experience and you sit for what will probably feel like a torturous amount of time, you will know you're ready because you'll be able to take small actions. So when nothing seems to help, let's address the elephant in the room, the stinky fish, right? What you do when everything you've tried, your meditations, your affirmations, your manifestations, your strategy plans, your risk analysis, your spreadsheets, your phone of friends, your phone and experts, like when none of that is working, Dr. Susan David, author of Emotional Agility, said that we feel stuck because we're bypassing our emotions. And I threw her in there just to back me up. She says, discomfort is the price of admission to a meaningful life. The goal isn't to avoid pain, it's to acknowledge it without letting it define you. As the Buddhists like to say, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. That's what we're talking about. Harvard also researched these micro actions and defined as tiny incremental changes. And it shows that even the smallest positive shifts can activate the brain's reward system. So even just shifting and reframing a thought, I think all of my clients roll their eyes when I'm like, what's a reframe? And they're like, well, this doesn't work, but it actually does. And so, sure, drinking a glass of water if you have potable water, or going for a walk outside if it's safe and the world isn't quite literally falling down around you, that'll make you feel better. But if those aren't available, one of the activities I've talked a lot about, and I have an example both in the Biz Boost, which is part of the Anti-Business School, which is free right now, link in show notes. It's called a focus wheel. And you basically draw a circle, cut it up like it's a pizza pie. You draw a cross, you draw an X, you got 8 slices. In the one just below 9 o'clock, you write down one thing you know to be true. My world was literally just destroyed. 2, and you move around in a counterclockwise way and you write something that is 1% better and also true. I am still alive. I still have my physical faculties. I also actually have shelter. I can access water, so on and so forth. And even just taking through that, I felt myself open up. And that's what I mean by giving yourself anything to create 1% improvement is available. And that will also look like you have permission to sit on the floor and cry right now. And I understand that's not going to pay your bills. Are you okay to cry until you're done crying? And then we can talk about these bills. I'm not saying you're going to pay them. I'm not saying you're not, but we'll figure it out when we're ready to. So now let's get into the latter half of this. Hopefully we've just bottomed out, right? So let's get it back up. I'm sure you're familiar with the gratitude practice, and as eye rolling as it is, when we talk about neuroplasticity and these neural pathways, when we've been in it, when we've been through the shit, we are hardwired to look for problems. This hypervigilance that has often been there for most of us since we were children means that somewhere on some subconscious level, we are just waiting for the rug to get pulled out from under us. We are constantly scanning for any piece of information or any stimulant that might feel dangerous and threatening. The problem is that is taking up a huge amount of our energy and our bandwidth and our creativity and our ability to progress. And so the gratitude practice, the writing down of evidence that actually things could get better, is creating those neural pathways. It is introducing a new habit. It is a practice that can be accomplished pretty simply and quickly, right? And like, I mean, the things that I was grateful for, I have shelter. I'm physically safe and okay in this moment. I'm not physically hurt. You know, we always like to say positive things. I'm physically healthy right now. Like, those are three pieces of evidence that our brain can't argue with. And by continually refocusing ourselves towards that positive factual information, we will start to reprogram our brain. So write down one thing that didn't go wrong, aka one thing that went right, or one small thing you appreciated. The first cup of hot coffee that I got, and believe me, I was pretty stoked on the cold coffee those first couple weeks. But like, it was I think it had been in my friend's coffee machine like the entire day, and she poured it for me. And I was like, oh, this is the best. You know, I mean, that's one of the things about these experiences is it really lowers your bar in terms of like what you need and what brings you happiness. And this is one of those practices that will remind you. It's probably actually not a lot. Gratitude practices have been shown to reduce stress and depression by rewiring the brain to focus on positives rather than negatives. A study from UC Berkeley found that writing about positive experiences, even just as much as once a week, significantly improves overall well-being. So I've done this in a variety of different ways with both myself and with clients. And so I'll, play with this, find out what works for you. I'll text myself, especially like little synchronicities. I will text myself to capture the magic that happens in my universe. So when something like unexpected happens, or when, you get a little sign that I interpret as like green light, keep going. And I want to make sure I am paying attention to those things. And the more that I pay attention to them, the more they seem to happen. I don't care about the science behind that, my friend. This is what I mean by rewire your brain to look for any sign of encouragement. You can keep a notebook by your bed. I literally have a gratitude journal that somebody else made, and it has, 5 prompts in it. They're the same every night. I've used that sometimes. Sometimes I use it in the morning when I wake up. Most of the time I end up just using it as like a random ass to-do list to get that shit out of my head. A little sticky notes. I mean, it really doesn't fucking matter. Whatever's going to support you, but commit to it. Pick a time frame and see what happens when you do it at the frequency you suggest for the amount of time. And just notice how you feel at the beginning of it and how you feel at the end of it. Cognitive behavioral psychology would suggest you rate it on a scale of 1 to 10. So like name your feeling when you first start this thing, name your feeling when you finish it the first time. And then I would repeat that process after you've completed your entire experiment. Okay, this is a fun one. And I call it talk to the manager. I've also heard it described as like put an order in with the universe, but write a what if list. So instead of focusing on all the things you can't do, or even your to-do list, or all of the things that are fucked up, play with possibilities. So write a list of what if questions. So this is one way of approaching this exercise, right? What if I tried a new hobby? Or what if I found a place where I could go for a hike? What if I reached out to someone I haven't talked to in a really long time? What if I reached out to somebody that I feel like can relate to my experience right now? What if I gave myself permission to rest? Those first few weeks, I mean, granted, there was no electricity and it was starting to get dark a lot earlier, but I was sleeping like 12 or 4. I was going to bed like 12 or 14 hours a night, which I had never actually done before. And not only was I going to bed, but I was just laying there. Like, I'm not great at sleeping. And so to say that I slept that long, but I would just really feel the bed supporting me and the gratitude that I had a bed to sleep in and that I was warm and that I was like, there, this is going to sound a little weird, but like, I was like, I am totally supported right now. Every part of my body is held and warm and protected. And that's all I actually want. And I have it right now. And when it was hard to get out of bed, I allowed myself to remain if I could really focus on that experience. If I was just beating myself up for being lazy and not volunteering and not helping and not blah, 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 then I had to get out of bed. So I kind of made it like this reward. Anywho, it was profound. That's kind of like a basic approach, right? The talk to the manager or put the order in the universe is a little bit of a play on this, where you put the things you can do on one side of a piece of paper. And then on the other side of the piece of paper, you put the things that just need to fucking happen that you're probably not going to get to, whether it's today, this week, or ever. And just trust it's all going to get done. And so when you're feeling overwhelmed, when you're feeling hopeless, when you're feeling apathetic, this is an incredibly powerful exercise, because what you essentially do is reframe the nothingness, the nihilism of that experience and go, okay, well, like, I'm going to get out of bed, I'm going to brush my teeth, and I'm going to eat an apple. And I'm probably not going to have electricity, but electricity would be great. That goes on the other side of the piece of paper. Also have zero control over when the electricity happens. It'd be cool if I could find some more drinking water today. It'd be cool if I could have that hard conversation that I'm like way too scared and anxious about having. So I'm just going to put that on the list. Like whatever might be showing up in your world right now, to finish my taxes, wash my car, break up with my partner, leave my job, like all of those things. Just put that on the other side and recognize it's happening. It's not fully within my control or my wherewithal to get to this, but I'm going to put it on the talk to the manager. The manager is going to take care of this. The universe is going to take care of it. God's going to take care of it. Whatever tickles your pickle, right? And just focus on the things that you put on that other side, even if it's just one thing. And maybe that one thing is just go back to bed. So lastly, and my little brother kind of taught me about this. He is an emergency medicine doctor. He works in ERs, but he's a wilderness practitioner, fellow, whatever. He like sets up hospitals and disasters, and like you can, kick him out of a helicopter and he can land on the side of the mountain and save you. And so when you are in a true state of panic and or trauma, by grounding yourself into the moment and by tuning into your five senses. So name 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, 1 thing you can taste. You are going to return back into your body. That frozen fight or flight, like that's disassociative, right? Because we don't even feel safe to be in our body. So by tuning into your 5 senses, you ground. Grounding techniques are proven to reduce anxiety and help regulate emotions by re-engaging the senses. So this is a study out of the University of Washington that found that mindfulness exercises, that's all this is, my friend. This is a mindfulness exercise. This is connecting mind to body. They lower cortisol levels and calm the nervous system within minutes. So you can use this anytime you feel overwhelmed or disconnected, and it can take less than a few minutes and be done anywhere, anytime. Okay, so we're getting there. We're nearly done. The thing about despair is it is a season. It too shall pass. And just because you feel stuck or hopeless or apathetic now doesn't mean you will stay here forever. Healing doesn't happen in a straight line. It is messy. It is unpredictable. It is deeply personal. And what I've certainly discovered is that tsunami wave of tragedy will crash when you least expect it. By taking the smallest steps, you are creating ripples of hope for you first and foremost. And over time, those ripples will turn into waves. So physically, ask yourself, what can I do to be with this energy? Some of us actually going for a run or going to yoga is going to be really powerful. Others of us, it is just going to be laying down and potentially holding ourselves, AKA the fetal position, right? What if you do just need to rest? What if you're just not ready to move on yet? What can you do with that information? What if you're going to need to rest until you don't? And it can truly just, one of the things I've done with clients as well is we just scale it back again until you get into that action gear. I say again, because I said that in the last episode, but can I be okay for the rest of this day? That feels doable. What about the rest of this week? Yeah, that actually felt doable. And at the time it was like, well, there's nothing anybody can do right now. And we're probably going to be like that for at least a couple weeks. Okay. And I called the people that I felt most beholden to, AKA my lenders and vendors and utilities and mortgage people, all of that stuff. And I said, I can't pay my bills. And they were like, yeah, you're good. And in fact, they were like, you're good for a couple months. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess I have a couple months to not worry about this. And I found myself worrying about it a lot because I habitually worry, and that doesn't actually solve any fucking problem. So I am like walking this walk with you. That's why I always say standing in solidarity with you. I think our physical bodies are the ones that really kick into gear when we get into these spaces. And so by physically showing yourself I'm safe, hence like the five senses exercise, by grounding into your physical body and just finding a place of safety and security and you giving that to you first, that's when you feel that, you will be ready to move on. So we kind of, and I get it, like there are real life fucking responsibilities that have to happen, especially if you've got kids, especially if you're caretaking somebody else, especially if you're having to work for somebody else and show up. So when you're in survival mode, you have full permission to survive. What is the least amount that you can do to get by? Who do you need to talk to, get permission from, get endorsed to literally just do the bare minimum? Why do you need to do this in the first place? And it's actually really easy when you have kids because you have this thing that gives you so much purpose because they fucking demand it. It brings a level 4, level 5, this expansive energy to your work. It's different when it's just your shitty ass boss at your shitty ass job that you hate, but like you got to pay your bills. But there it is, right? And so you can find some whys behind this bare minimum, and that will energize you to be able to at least take action on some of the smallest steps that can then become these bigger waves, right? And last, before we like kind of move through the productivity, what if you could just do nothing? Like, what might that look like? And I'm not telling you don't do shit. We just talked about small little actions, but actually, giving yourself permission to be still is a different way of approaching things. I don't know anybody that's like, okay, it's cool, we're doing nothing. And also, I think that I've been there a lot over the last few months, and that's why I'm here now. I think some of the things that I've let go it would have taken older versions of me months, if not years, to move through. And it's really just kind of happened in a matter of a few weeks. So lastly, and again, firstly, you're going to anchor into your physical safety and security. Then you're going to look at the action steps, the minimal action steps that are necessary to take, or potentially giving yourself permission to just simply be, which is also a very, very concerted effort in action. When you're ready, you will get to a creative space. And this showed up for me. Like I literally started having ideas again. I was like, ooh, I could make a podcast episode about that. I didn't have ideas for a long time. You will notice that you start to think about things a little bit differently. It doesn't necessarily show up like hope or positivity. It might for you. That might feel a little bit more like excitement or happiness or engagement. I couldn't access any of those emotions either for like a couple months. I was just, like I said, numb. And then I could hear it in my own voice when I kind of came alive again. And then I could listen to music again, or I could be around friends again. And I was like, oh, okay, we have reanimation. Wait until beyond the last minute of knowing, in terms of like, you can anchor into your physical body, you can feel like you're ready to take action, and then that certainty will come with an additional experience, a feeling. And that's when you're really kind of starting to step up this energetic ladder and prepare to get back into the world. And the last thing I'll say about that is, like, laughing and humor is a pretty epic way really play with all of this. And if for nothing else, just laughing at yourself that you're like, curled up on the floor on a Tuesday morning, not doing shit. Like the humor, the irony, the surprise, really tuning into where am I feeling this? Why am I feeling this? What's the story I'm telling myself? Like, if we need to keep like on keeping on, doing it with a smile and a chuckle is potentially, what the only way out is through. At least do it laughing. And, believe me, like there have been some really tragic things that have occurred, but I can remember something funny that I shared with that person who's no longer here. Or I can remember something stupid and crazy that I said, despite the fact that there is nothing to smile or laugh about right now. I was doing that in my yoga class today. I literally started laughing, just thinking about some silly ass shit that's gone down and just how banana bonkers everything is. This is what I mean about reprogramming your brain and rewiring for something as opposed to nothing. You might not be ready for this. If you've listened to this episode and you felt a lot of resistance, or it's felt blamey or shamey, or you felt like this is all a bit woo-woo, you might be in a position where you're still just looking to anchor into that physical safety and security. When I reflect on why my tricks didn't work, it was because I was not physically, mentally, or emotionally ready to move on yet. There is this certain, like I said, je ne sais quoi, there is a romanticism that occurs with this tragedy. And when I talked about that learned hopelessness as a kid, what I realized is, we all know one of the benefits of that level 1, that total victimization and hopelessness and apathy and depression, is we get attention and help and permission to pause. I didn't know how else to give myself that without tragic circumstance. And lo and behold, I've had a lot of that. And perhaps it was because I actually finally truly needed to learn how to give myself the space to heal and nurture just for the sake of that skill set. And I don't need to get scammed in crypto and lose all of my slush fund, my fuck you fund, or lose a home, or survive a national disaster, or lose someone I cared, deeply about, or multiple relationships. How about I just give myself permission to pause for no reason at all, other than I need a little bit of healing and nurturing, right? I knew I would be okay because I have been here before. I am familiar with this feeling of despair. And, in the mental health spaces, we call it clinical depression. And I know it will pass. And I also, I opened up to different solutions and things that I don't like talk therapy and or medication. I was like, let's try fucking anything, because I can't negotiate with this and my tools aren't working. So I know how scary and hard it is when it feels like you're losing everything and there's nothing you can do about it. But here's the thing, that's actually a good sign, because when you're really in it, you don't care. It's just gone. And you just watch it slip through your fingers. So if you want change, you're actually climbing up that energetic ladder. And that level 3 is available to you. Make a plan, find some responsibility, some agency in your experience. But that plan might be, I need more time in 1 and 2 because I am still feeling completely and totally overwhelmed with hopelessness and anxiety. That's your plan, is okay, we're going to go back to healing. We're going to go back to nurturing. We're going to go back to finding that physical security and safety. So if you can't take action and solve all of the problems, you're just not ready to yet. And when you finally, truly, wholly give yourself permission to just not, you will actually process all of this unresolved victimization and pain and suffering and blame and shame and anger and resentment and retribution and regret, so that it doesn't keep popping up, or you don't keep destroying everything around you, because you're just actually somehow connecting this very basic need to feel safe to tragedy and destruction, because the only time you ever give yourself permission to feel safe is when you can't do anything else but pause. Okay. So, wow. Whew. That was another heavy one. Everything else will actually be there when you're ready. And anything that wasn't meant to be yours anyway. And that's a very hard truth. Some of you know exactly what the fuck I'm talking about. And some of you are like, no fucking way, I refuse to accept that. Absolutely not. I worked with this with a client yesterday. What if I told you there is no way for you to control the outcome? And she was like, I refuse to participate in that reality. Okay. How's that working for you? What is the patterning? What is your experience? What if actually the only thing you get to control is how you feel in this moment? And that might be utter despair. Okay. Well, then fucking feel it until it dissipates. That's how that works. So until we get to do another one of these super fun episodes, please be gentle with yourself and be compassionate with those around you. This is a particularly rough time of year. And this has been I don't know anyone who got out of this year alive. Like it's been actually insane. The tiniest ripple of change, including just simply reframing a thought or identifying a feeling, will create a tsunami wave of change for you. So even in the darkest times, small, teeny tiny, infinitesimal changes will plant these seeds of light. And if you know someone who is struggling, firstly, make sure that they've got the support in place, reach out and feel free to share this with them. I hope that this can help someone out there. That's why I'm creating this and sharing quite ultimately, like, which is, yeah, it's embarrassing. It's not easy for someone whose job is to solve problems to say, I have problems I don't know how to solve. And until the first step is admitting you have a problem. So anywho, okay, I've been jibber jabbering. I'm done now with feeling like this. So I appreciate you doing this with me. Yeah, I'm realizing like I didn't really tie this into work at all, but it's because this is what happens when you can't work. So that's all I got for you. I'm just going to leave it there. I love you. Bye.